Hey, everybody, welcome to today's show. So, as a business owner, have you ever thought about growth and really what that equates to? Does it mean more customers, more revenue, maybe a bigger team? Have you ever thought that growth may not actually solve your problems? What if growth is exposing weaknesses in our businesses that are actually hiding beneath the surface? So, today we're going to talk about what really happens as a business scales, why more revenue in your business doesn't always equal a healthier outcome, and building a business that creates freedom instead of dependence. Our guest, Damiano Raveenthiran, has lived both sides of that story, from knocking on doors with just a few $100s in his pocket to building and scaling multiple multi-million dollar companies. He's experienced the excitement of rapid growth and the hard lessons that come when a business becomes dependent on its founder. Today, he's leading the agency business, where he helps founders build stronger, more scalable businesses, and has worked with brands like Panasonic, Dyson, and dozens of high-growth companies to help them launch, grow, and evolve. Damiano, welcome to the show. We're very excited to have you here with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So at 24, you write that you had $400 in your pocket. You'd printed
Mhm.
your LinkedIn profile about 100 times, and you'd spent the day knocking on doors looking for your very first client. I think a lot of people would give up before they hit door number 100. So what was happening for you back then that was really driving you forward?
Yeah, I received advice in my teenage years. I think I was like 17, 16 or 17, but someone told me that if you don't have a job, you have to spend the same amount of time that you would working, but trying to find one. And so at the time I didn't have a job. I just moved to a new city, and I had $400 left in my pocket after I paid my first month of rent, and like I really had to make it work that month. And and I remember I was just like, listen, like 8 hours is what I would work if I was working a full-time job. So I'm gonna put 8 hours into just trying to find work, basically. I had been learning how to build websites by watching a few YouTube videos at the time. Got my got a little bit of experience from just signing up for Shopify and trying to build a website myself. I figured after a few days of figuring out how that process worked, I was like, okay, there's probably a few people here in Toronto that don't have websites, and so let me just walk into all of these stores and ask them. Looking back, I probably should have done a little bit more research. Like I didn't even go to the websites and check it out or anything like that. But I ended up doing that for 10 hours that day. Literally walked down Queen Street into downtown Toronto and just started applying a little bit everywhere. And to my surprise, I ended up getting a few people that were interested, and that's really where my journey started as a freelancer and eventually as an agency owner.
So it sounds like a whole lot of hustle and what I call stick-to-itiveness. Were there
Mhm.
any other big lessons that you feel like you didn't learn until much later?
Um, yeah, like tons, right? Even when I closed my first client back then, 12 years ago, um, I went in asking them if they needed a website, but very quickly I noticed that the client didn't just need a website; they actually needed a lot of help on the marketing side and everything having to do with their business. And so that really opened my eyes to being able to be more outcome driven, and really like have that mindset of, my clients are not coming to me for a specific service, but they're coming to me to achieve an outcome. Usually that outcome is more sales, more sustainable growth. And there's a lot of ways to achieve that. And so I kind of learned over time to not pigeonhole myself into a service. I could have been a website designer and developer the rest of my career, but I didn't. And that is what gave us the success that we've had with our agencies. Um, it's really taking that approach of, you know what, I'm not just going to sell you a service. I'm going to try to understand your business. I'm going to try to help you with problem solve, because business is a never ending exercise in problem solving. And when you have the right people around you that can support you in that process, that's usually where you can get the most value. And as an agency owner, that's where I can give the most value as well. So that was a that was a big learning from that time.
So you've grown companies from virtually nothing into multi-million dollar businesses, but you've said something that really caught my attention, which is growth doesn't solve problems, it can expose them. So what do you think founders usually discover much too late? What's something you'd like for them to understand about their business sooner?
Yeah, I mean, usually when somebody starts a business, they're not very like process oriented. And when something goes wrong, they tend to blame people. That's an easy mistake to get into. What I usually tell people that I work with is that you always have to blame the process before you blame the people. And so, the thing is, like, if your process is not built correctly, it doesn't mean that it won't scale. It probably will scale. It's just that if you have problems with your process and you scale it, you're just going to end up with more problems. And so, in a lot of cases, founders don't realize that so much of your company's success is based on the internal documentation and the processes that you set up so that your team or whoever can run it effectively. And one of the analogies that I like to talk about is, we've all been to high school. You probably had that one person that wasn't the brightest light on the Christmas tree in high school, and you always thought, man, what is this person going to do later on in their lives? And you look at them today, 30 years later, and they're like underwriters in insurance companies, right? And you're like, how did this person who was a total idiot get a job with this much responsibility? And they're in charge of determining whether people get their insurance claims or not. And the reason why that person's able to do that job in a lot of cases is because the insurance company paid millions of dollars to build a process where they can take anyone, put them in there, and as long as they're following the process, the outcome is always going to be the same. And so when your company is founder dependent or talent dependent, that's what you're losing, right? And that's the risk that you're running because if you burn out or if one of your employees leaves and the process lives with them, it's gonna be hell to try to scale. And so that's usually what I tell the founders that I work with is that like it's fine to want to grow the business, but it's okay to go a little bit slower in the name of sustainability.
I think solid processes are absolutely vital. Like you're saying, I 100% agree
Mhm.
with you there. And on the revenue side, revenue can often hide a lot of problems. So, are there metrics or even warning signs that you're paying attention to that you think matter more than top line growth?
I mean, bottom line growth, definitely. In a lot of cases, and, one of the things that I see among a lot of founders is that, we start these businesses because we want to increase our personal net worth. That's the goal. Like we all start businesses because of that in most cases. But somewhere along the line, it becomes about growing the company and less about your personal net worth. I've worked with founders that pay themselves very, very, very little. Some founders that don't pay themselves at all in the name of growing the business. And I could see where that comes from. It comes from a good place. But the main thing is, you started this because you want to raise your personal net worth. And so every decision should be taken with that into account. So when you're thinking about like decreasing costs, it's not just because you want to spend the money somewhere else or do something like that. It's also because you want to be able to take some money home, and to increase the value of the company because you have more profits and things like that. So I definitely and this is actually very, very common where a lot of founders will talk and they'll be like, oh, we're at 40K a month, we're at 50K a month, we're at 100K a month. But what does that really mean profit wise? Um, and are you calculating profits correctly? Are you taking are you trying to decrease cost by 5% every month? Like in a lot of the companies that I run, like we try to do that and we try to find different ways to decrease costs and not just increase revenue. And if we are making a move to increase our revenue, then making sure that the processes that we're setting in place in that are gonna be valuable and a good investment for what we're trying to do. So those are some of the things that I look at there.
So, within your own experience of growing your businesses, was there ever a moment when you realized that maybe what you were growing and that everyone might have admired from the outside looking in wasn't exactly the business that you wanted to own?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. Definitely. I mean, there's so much that goes into growing a business. I can tell you that the first time that I started an agency, I didn't expect to have that much success, and I don't have an MBA or a business degree or anything like that. And so, with my first businesses, I made every possible mistake that you can make running a business, and the business grew. The business scaled. We made it to $8.4 million a year. Um, but we were way too heavy on talent. We had 75 employees, which is like a lot for a company that size. We had offices that we were paying. We had tons and tons of expenses, and the culture that we had built was around us being a family, right? And so there's good and bad that comes from that kind of family culture in a business, right? It's harder to get rid of people if they're not performing, right? It's not like a sports team, and so um, I found myself at some point with $250,000 a month worth of overhead, revenue going down, and knowing I had to make cuts, but not having the courage to be able to tell my staff that I had been treating like family members, that I had to let them go. Um, and it was at that point that I really realized that I had made a lot of mistakes in the business, not just culture wise, but also in making the business so founder dependent. Every major decision ran through me, and everything became quite difficult. And so, um, yeah, that's where I decided to make the shift.
I think founder dependency is very much a real thing. So it sounds like there was an aha moment there as well,
Mhm.
alongside other aha moments. How would a founder know that they're really crossing that line?
I mean, try to walk away for a couple of days, right? That's what I tell my clients. I mean, for me, I was forced to do it because in 2021 I had my son, and my son was sick when he was born, so he had to stay in the hospital for about 3 months. He's okay now. But in those 3 months, you're with your newborn and your wife at the hospital, you're not really worrying about anything else. And so I had to step away from the business. Um, Luckily, I've been able to nurture some relationship with some really good friends that came in and helped me during that time, and so it was okay. But it became very clear to me that the business couldn't run without, and that if I broke, everything broke. And we weren't a small business at the time. We had like several hundred clients, some large brands as well that we were working with, and the fact that every major decision had to go through me was not that great. And so I decided to change things afterwards.
So, if there's founders listening right now and they're thinking, I want to build a business that I can eventually step away from, um, not just one, where I want the business itself just to grow, like where should they begin to think about next steps? What's the first thing you're telling them to look at and consider in terms of getting out of that position?
Yeah, so the first thing that they should do is just audit their time, right? Like what are they spending their personal time on? And is that work in the business or on the business? And if it's work in the business, then you want to get rid of that as much as possible. Usually a service business will be uh, usually about four departments. You have lead generation, sales, project management, and delivery. And usually when a founder starts, he's the person doing everything, right? You're generating the leads, you're closing them, you're managing the relationship, you're delivering for them. And then over time, as the company grows, then you end up getting people in each of those departments. And the beauty of having the blueprint broken down in that way is that eventually you can hire an executive team as well if the company grows large enough, to take care of each of those departments. And that's really when you can step away from it completely. But the goal is to buy back your time, right? Like figure out what's taking a lot of your time. We audit the tasks and we ask ourselves like, how much is this task worth? In some cases, some founders are stuck doing $4 an hour tasks, like that are just not worth that much, and can be delegated. And so it's better to delegate a task that's not worth your time at that point, even if you think that you can do it better. And that's usually what stops a lot of founders from wanting to delegate. Um, it's the fact that they think they can do it better than anybody else. But the reality is, the team that you hire doesn't have to do it as well as you. They have to do it about 70% as well as you do. And the rest, the 30%, that's on your processes. And so if your processes are built correctly, then you're always going to get the same outcome, um, as long as everything is being followed. Um, so yeah, so I think really like auditing your time, getting clear on what tasks you should do as the founder and what else can be delegated, and also from a mentality perspective, just getting over the I can't afford to hire someone, because I hear that all day. The reality is you can't afford not to hire someone. because your growth depends on it. And the fact that you're able to hire someone and then free up your time, with that free time, you can use that to generate more business. Um, so that's what I would say.
So, and assuming we've removed the founder dependency, because that's obviously a very large bottleneck, and now we're looking at essentially workflow alignment. So tasks are sitting at the right level, because I've seen a lot of businesses where you're right, you have a founder doing lower level tasks, if you want to put it that way. What is the next thing that you're looking at? Is there any other signs that a business is not going to support the next stage of growth that it needs to be making?
Yeah, like it. I mean, I feel like at every stage, it's a little bit different. So it really depends on what stage the business is at. But I would say founder dependency and talent dependency are usually like the big ones. Like if you lose that one employee, and then you can't run that service anymore, or you can't run that whole side of the business anymore, it's a problem. And it's not something that you should scale. You should solve that problem first so that anyone becomes replaceable. Anyone becomes somebody that can follow a process. And there's as much automation as you can within the company, which will increase the valuation and the revenue as well. And so I would really look at the process, and whether the process is something that if you had 100 times more revenue, would you be okay with this process scaling to that size? And it's also around like putting a limit on the capacity that a process can handle. Like sometimes if a company's at like 10, 20K a month, they're a startup, they just started, they have a process, it works for them at that point. But what is the capacity of this process? Maybe it could take us to 30K, maybe it could take us to 40K. But we know that at some point it will break on us. And so we need a better process in place.
So you mentioned automation a moment ago. So would you say that that's probably the biggest differentiator in growth versus becoming more valuable?
Becoming more valuable in what sense? Like for the company?
So in terms of, would that be like a very large differentiator in a business that is just growing versus one that's actually growing and becoming more valuable?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, think of it from the buyer perspective, right? If you were to buy a business today and the founder tells you, oh, yeah, like we make X number per revenue per month, but it all relies on me. And so buy my company, but like it all relies on me, right? So that's not as attractive, and you're not going to evaluate that company as high as a company where the founder comes to you and goes like, I'm working 20 hours a week on this business. To be honest, I can walk away from it anytime because I have processes and people in place that are replaceable, that can basically take care of all this. So you buy my business tomorrow, you won't necessarily need to step in and do anything yourself because the business will run itself. That business is definitely worth a lot more than the first one.
Do you think your definition of a great business changed after going through an exit?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, like, especially with my first business, when I exited, I had made every mistake in the book. And so I didn't get the type of exit that I wanted with that. It was still like a decent exit, and it propelled me forward for the next ones after that. But I learned a lot from even to having those conversations with potential buyers, and with investment banks and VC funds and all sorts of different people in the M&A space. And in the end, like my valuation wasn't as high as I would have liked it to be, but I knew why, and I knew some of the risks that were there. I've had a lot of conversations with people that walked away from the deal as well because the company was so talent and founder dependent. And so after that, with my other businesses, I built them completely different. So today I build businesses in a much, much more different way.
How much do you think private equity may have changed the way you feel about building a business?
I mean, it definitely helped. It definitely helped a lot. I think once I got into the private equity space, I saw how people that own private equity firms leverage their networks and their resources to be able to run businesses without necessarily being in the day to day. How they build teams of talented people and drive direction and offer them resources to be able to grow. And and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with private equity. I thought that was a really cool way of building businesses, a really fast way of growing in a lot of cases. And so, um, yeah, it has definitely been a challenge. My private equity firm is about a year old now, but um, we have been learning quite a bit through that process, and connecting with other people in the space has really opened our eyes. And we've made some acquisitions like early on in our first year, and launched a couple of products and stuff. And it's great to see that all the founders that are within our ecosystem are benefiting from the shared resources and the shared network. Um, so yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned leveraging networks. What advice would you give to our business owners in terms of leveraging your network? Because it's often been said your network is your net worth.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to do is to get clarity on who your network is. And so usually what I tell founders is, if you haven't done it already, you need to audit your network. You need to like on a spreadsheet, literally put down the name of the people that you know that you speak to on a regular basis. Make a column around like what the relationship has been, what they do. Make another column around what the possible opportunity is for you guys to work together. Whether it's on a partnership level or on a referral basis or even as a client or or something like that, right? So auditing your network and getting clarity over who you know will be the first step. The second step will be to get clarity over your goals and what you're trying to achieve throughout the year. We work with OKRs, objective key results, which is a management framework that allows us to be outcome driven in our goal setting. And so, working with a framework like that allows you to really figure out what you're trying to achieve, and then from there you can build a networking strategy to build a network that allows you to achieve what you want to achieve with specific goals, specific KPIs, key results that you want to hit. Let's say I was breaking into a new industry, and I did this with my first agency. We worked with a couple of e-commerce furniture stores at the time, just doing marketing for them. Um, and we realized that we were really good at it. And so I was like, okay, well, I want to build my network in this industry and go after merchants that are selling furniture in the US. And once you understand the goal, you understand what you're trying to achieve, then you can create a strategy. And I started looking at, hey, what do I need to do to get face-to-face time with these people? There's a bunch of conferences happening throughout the US, like in different times and different places. And so I was like, great, can I attend some of these? Is it worth it for me to go there? Can I book meetings before going there so that I already have certain meetings booked and a way for me to hit a specific KPI? So that's kind of the strategy that I put in place for networking. But it's all about adding intentionality to the process and just being intentional about it rather than just floating through and hoping to meet the right people.
So you touched on OKRs. That's one of my favorite things to do when I'm looking at what's happening within a business. I think a lot of people can get stuck translating from there into a task, or they get confused between I'm setting all these tasks I need to do in my business versus I have my OKRs. So are there any tools that you recommend to people that can really help you get that clarity to define that for within your business and then to track it so you know how well you're doing as you're moving forward?
Yeah, there's actually an amazing tool that I just started working with. It's called Stellify. Stellify is it's an operating system that turns delivery into proven outcomes. Basically, I just read it off their website, but it's an AI tool that allows you to really get clear around your OKRs and gives you recommendations on how to make better OKRs and things like that. It was built by a consulting firm that's being run by a friend of mine who was an OKR consultant. It's literally all he did for organizations, and now he's built Stellify, which is pretty awesome. So I've been working with them for a couple of years now, and I usually connect them with a lot of my clients on the consulting side as well. And it's a very easy way to stay accountable to your OKRs and make sure that you're doing the right thing and that you're clear on your outcomes.
I love that. I always love learning about new tools that are coming into the space. And I think referrals are always the best way to bring things into your business. So, Damiano, thank you for being here with us. If you could leave the audience with one last thought, the most important thing that you would want to convey, what would that be?
Is that business is about people and it's about relationships, and in a lot of cases, especially in the age that we live in today, with AI and automations and all of that, you tend to lose track of that. And so, building trust and familiarity face to face with good people, and making sure that you have a solid network that can support you in doing that, I would say is the most important thing for anyone. If I can leave with
And
anything, it would be that.
how can everyone listening follow you, connect to you on socials, and find you on the internet?
Yeah, so I'm on all the social platforms. You can look me up. It's just Damiano R. Very active on LinkedIn. And so you can look for me through my name with Damiano Raveenthiran. And then on YouTube at the agency business.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us today. This has been an exciting and riveting conversation. So if you are looking to grow your business, make it more valuable, start to consider bringing automation in and take those first steps forward. Damiano has given us some very wonderful thoughts that we can take and move forward with starting right now, immediately, and including tools that we can use for developing OKRs in our business and for actually tracking our progress inside the business towards that. So get out there, take a look at that, find him on LinkedIn, connect on social media. And until next time, we appreciate you joining us.